Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is another Roma Press live stream. We are here on a Friday. It's 9 p.m. Central European time. And John couldn't be here earlier on Thursday as we usually record our podcast. So tonight I thought it would be nice to come together and have a proper live stream where we can debate, discuss, sort of come together as the season winds to an end, as Roma enter a particularly crucial last two games, which I don't know how crucial they can be in our minds, since obviously there has been disappointment since the game against Bayer Leverkusen, and more recently the game against Atalanta. And obviously, these two games have taken a toll, not only on our physical strength but as well as mental, and I think that goes for both players and fans alike. So I just wanted to wait around and see how many people can join us tonight. I realize for people on the East Coast it may still be a work day, so people could be tuning in also from their offices. Although the weekend is almost upon us, it would be nice to come together and also react to some of the latest news and rumors regarding Roma's busy summer. It always seems like whenever things go south, and they usually do go south uh, at this time of the year, I would say for the past 5 years, 6 years, because that's how long we've been stout on Champions League football, with the exception of obviously the Conference League final, which we won in 2022. Um, this part of the season has always been quite disappointing. Roma have always come up short at this part of the season, and thus the team's performances, the team's results, always seem to spark much more discussions about what goes on off the pitch as soon as the season ends. Let's remember, in Paulo Fonseca's last season, Paulo Fonseca doesn't even conclude his spell with Roma, and there is already an announcement that Jose Mourinho will be taking over for him. So Paulo Fonseca completes the last 3 weeks of the season with the knowledge that he won't be there anymore, and with the exact knowledge of who his successor will be. So there has always been very much this projection towards the future. Always seems like we prepare throughout all of the summer. We prepare for one season, and then as soon as the season starts, as soon as Roma start to come up short, as soon as inconsistencies hit, as soon as injuries hit, it always seems like we switch to what goes on off the pitch. And usually, what goes on off the pitch is discussions, talks, rumors about the future of players, coaches, executives. So this time around, there is plenty to talk about. I think people are growing increasingly curious about what the plans for the Roma are this summer, given that they will almost certainly miss out on next year's Champions League. I mean, we can hope for a miracle. I don't know how many people on here during this live stream will be cheering for Atalanta in the Europa League final. But obviously, it will be a time where questions will be addressed as to what Roma can do this summer with the arrival of a new sporting director. Now, we can also get to that, and I will get to that because I plan to sort of give a broad overview of what has been up on the website, the Roma Press website, which I want to thank everybody for visiting, reading, for sharing. It's the website has grown exponentially over the last 3 years. It's really been amazing how many people give us their faith, their clicks, and how many people are excited to read. Usually, news are news in football. Most news are rumors, and I always try to, whenever I'm writing these articles, whenever I'm compiling and translating the articles from Italian media, I always try to pick out the stuff that can be relatively reliable. Now, that's a big and difficult world, reliable in this world of social media, and especially sports. In sports, it's a dangerous territory. So we will get to this discussion about the sporting director, because it seems like Roma have already picked out their favorite name. The name is Florent Ghisolfi from Nice, a 39-year-old French executive who will, say for some odd surprises, become Roma's new sporting director. Finally, after over 3 months since Thiago Pinto left the club, Roma will appoint a new sporting director in his place. Ghisolfi is already in talks to exit Nice. He will do so. This whole thing will become official as soon as the Ligue 1 season ends. And we had on the website today some also discussion about what the news, what the also latest, what the latest objectives for Ghisolfi and as well De Rossi, who will be working closely together, what these objectives will be for the summer. I think there is a lot of interest in how we can remold this Roma side, right? Because we've clearly come to a point, as always, again, as always, where the team is not good enough, where the team is not strong enough to compete for the objectives that initially it sets out to compete for. And so we find ourselves, it's May, and by, I think, popular agreement, I would say 70% of the team is considered crap. I'm just speaking from the evidence that I find in our patron WhatsApp group chat, which you can also join, among other benefits that you get as a patron. If you subscribe to our patron by going to patreon.com/Roma Press, you can get a lot of cool benefits. You can get early access to podcast episodes. You can get extra episodes right after the match when John records special episodes for patrons only, and you can also get cool merchandise along the way. So consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/Roma Press, and you can join our wonderful community of psychopaths and all kinds of deviants. It's wonderful. I love it. And it's a nice reflection of what can go on inside the mind of a fan, of a supporter. There is a lot of contrasting thoughts and feelings as Roma's season begins and then proceeds and then winds to an end. And being involved in the group chat has really given me an idea of what a Roma fan can go through. From August until May of next year, it's a wild ride. Let me assure you of that. So first of all, as soon as we have 12 people, I wanted to just have more likes if possible, guys. If you just got in here, click on the like button. That really helps to get some visibility. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. This is where you can get all your latest podcast episodes in video format. And you can also sometimes follow these live streams, which I usually schedule in advance so people know what's up. So let's get into this discussion about Roma's upcoming summer window. And I'll conclude this live stream by just briefly going over what we can expect from Roma Genoa, although I do realize that it's not as exciting because we all know that sort of the stakes involved right now are extremely low. Since this loss to Atalanta sort of completely undercut whatever ambitions we may have had after the debacle in the Europa League. So Roma are clearly going to have a major. They've had a major revolution already within the upper management. I mean, with the exception of CEO Lina Suluku, who has the complete trust of the Friedkins, who is a close collaborator of the Friedkins and a close collaborator of Daniele De Rossi. Everybody else was touchable, and everybody else basically was sent home. That includes Roma's head of communications, someone who was known for being sort of the main source for a lot of journalists. He was sent home. So this was a guy who was also providing John with information, and and he was sent packing for no reason. So there's been a lot of movement within Roma's management, and there's going to be a lot of movement also with regards to Roma's roster, because I think with the Friedkins, it's always been clear that for them the Champions League it's of uttermost interest and utmost importance because of its meaning for the visibility of the brand, and also obviously for the money that you can earn along the way. But despite all the pessimism that we usually go through when we head into this summer, the summer transfer window over the years has always been very traumatizing for Roma. It seems like, starting from Roma having to part ways with a lot of great players in order to generate the revenue that was necessary for the club. So, for example, obviously we all remember Mohamed Salah, Alisson Becker, those great players who went on to be difference makers and world champions elsewhere, and who Roma had to sacrifice in the name of this damn plusvalenza, which is forced upon us by the financial fair play. Cheers. Today I'm having a bit of a beer just to feel more relaxed. Obviously, Roma this summer, by all accounts, it seems like what has emerged over recent days from sources such as Corriere dello Sport and even our good friend Filippo Biafora of Il Tempo, these sources have been saying that Roma are quite optimistic ahead of this summer. The financial fair play constraints this summer will be much less strict than last year. Roma will also have the important sale of Roger Ibanez, who was sold to Saudi Arabia last year. That sale, the generated revenue from that sale, will be written down in this year's balance sheets, which is very important. If you consider the fee that Roma earned from that sale, that fee in of itself gives you a lot of leeway this summer. According to Corriere dello Sport, Roma will only be required to generate around 10 million euros in revenue from player sales, and that can easily be achieved by selling someone like Nicola Zalewski. Now, this is where the interesting part comes in. The names, people are fascinated by names because there is always contrasting thoughts and feelings about who is useful to the cause. So we've seen Roma this summer prepare to potentially sell the likes of Nicola Zalewski, Eduardo Bove even. That name was also mentioned because, as always, Eduardo Bove, a guy who was clearly in great form at the start of the season. Managers change, and sometimes players do not benefit from that change. Such was the case for Bove, who has been unable to break through De Rossi's ranks. When he was given the chance to start for De Rossi, he did not impress. And now it seems like Bove's agent is getting quite unsettled by this situation and could potentially ask Roma to consider the option of selling him somewhere else. Now, I'm going to get to the questions, and obviously you guys are always welcome to comment or ask questions in the chat. Please keep it civilized, but it's always nice to get some contribution, to get some ideas and some talking points. So let me know, guys. For example, what are the players that have to be sold this summer if Roma want to get better? Now, there is a lot of different categories that we can go through that, because someone like Chris Smalling, for example, now that's a big focus for Roma this summer. It's not only going to be about generating revenue, which this year it's minimal, and Roma will have more leeway also in terms of spending. And the Friedkins have already made it clear that they will try to invest as much as possible, as much as they can, and as much as they can also still under the settlement agreement by UEFA, because it's not like that has gone. That is still valid and will be valid until 2027. Roma will be under UEFA's supervision under that until that date, 2027. So the Friedkins will try to spend, but at the same time, Roma have the third highest wage bill in Serie A. Now that's something that is problematic for a club that has not achieved Champions League football in over 6 years, in 6 seasons, 5 years, because that will be the last time we played Champions League football was in Porto in 2019. So let me get to the comments before I proceed. We have some questions from Dennis. Is Dybala worth keeping in your opinion? Should Romanisti expect big signings in the summer? Now, I think that already is interesting to talk about, because we have different probably ideas about what a good summer looks for Roma, what the big signings are. Now, we've seen Federico Chiesa being linked to Roma. Federico Chiesa certainly is a player that Roma want, because I wanted to get to it later. But Roma will definitely, under Daniele De Rossi, they will try to add more pace. And Daniele De Rossi is someone who wants Roma to play faster and have players who are of a really high technical level. He wants players who have good footwork. He wants guys who, in the absence of the likes of Lorenzo Pellegrini or Leandro Paredes, will still slot in and will still help help keep the possession for the team and create opportunities, which is something that Daniele De Rossi has been very critical of. If he's not been, Daniele De Rossi has been very praiseful towards the rest of the team. But one thing that's bothered him, and one thing that he kept coming back to, is that the midfield is not technical enough. And that will apply also to other positions. On the wings, Roma are expected to complete a huge overhaul of the players that play on the wings. That includes the fullbacks. Rasmus Christensen will go back to Leeds United. Leonardo Spinazzola will become a free agent. By all accounts, it seems like, whatever initial idea Roma may have had of extending his deal on a lower salary, with this latest injury, Spinazzola seems to have concluded his time at Roma. Rick Karsdorp obviously also on the way out. He still has one more year left on his contract with the club. It's unbelievable. This is a guy who joined in 2018, and he's still here. And this seems like it's going to be the last summer for him with Roma. Zeki Salik, also a guy who could be easily moved. So the only player who, and obviously Nikola Zaleski, if you count him as a left back, will also be tried and moved elsewhere, because he's just not going to get the playing time he wants, and also not the kind of profile that I think De Rossi wants to have in that position. The only fullback who will stay is going to be Angelino, who seems to have convinced the club, and Roma will purchase him for around 5 million from Leipzig. The 5 million are payable over the next 3 years. So let's get to the other questions. Sorry for a silly question, but do you think that De Rossi is unwilling to let someone outshine him in this position? It's absurd to constantly choose Cristante over Bove. Javid, I understand that it's very unsettling for fans to keep seeing Brian Cristante on the pitch. And I think that applies to all the other players who, like him, play an absurd amount of minutes. Cristante has the highest number of minutes played by a player in his position in Serie A. It's absurd how much he plays. And that applies to also Lorenzo Pellegrini, Gianluca Mancini. So sort of the core three, the main three guys for Roma, Leandro Paredes. These are players that can be quality if you don't squeeze them. And Roma have been squeezing these guys. That's the misconception around the core, because I see that also in the WhatsApp patron group chat. People who are get very animated by this thing of having these three core players underperforming, and they say, well, if Roma underperform, it's because the core is rotten. They're not good enough. I think the misconception comes from the fact that no, they are good enough. But if you have Brian Cristante or Lorenzo Pellegrini or Gianluca Mancini play 90 minutes every game for 5 straight months, now that's problematic, and you will never get the best of them. And I think Cristante offers a lot more in terms of how he helps the team become organized, come alive. He takes on a lot more responsibility than Bove. Now that obviously can be worked on. Bove is young, and I'm not here claiming that he should be sold, because I'm the first one to be very fond of Bove, and also I thought he was fantastic. If there is one player who was redeemable in that first half of the season, which was horrendous under Jose Mourinho, that was Bove. Bove was excellent there. He was our bright star, and he was really doing things that you want a player of his age to do that. He was showing all the right signs. In recent months, he's lost himself. He's lost that confidence. He's also lost the grit, and right now he's just not giving what De Rossi wants. I think you can't focus on De Rossi in this case being wrong, because Brankenstein has been starting for Roma over any other player for since he got here in 2018. Since that time, Brankiston has been starting over every other player. He's been starting for Italy as well. There has to be something. I'm not saying that this guy is a magician. I'm just saying there has to be something that convinces coaches to keep playing him. The problem is to keep playing him when he's tired, and that applies to all the other players who get highly utilized by Roma. And it seems like the backup choices never really give us much leeway whenever we want to give these guys a rest. Think about how many times Brian Cristante under Jose Mourinho was rested in a Europa League match just for him to be brought back on in the second half to help the team get back into a game that you may have um, lost in the first half. So it's all, I think, a matter of how you utilize these players. Hi, Andy. Greetings. Can you give us your opinion on the new sporting director? Is there a profile to get excited about, given the status of all the players in Roma and the requirements of Daniele De Rossi? Musab, I think Florent Ghisolfi is a profile that hadn't come up in reports up until 2 weeks ago. I think it was Gianluca Di Marzio who first mentioned him. Roma have been looking at him and have had talks with him much earlier on, around January, when it was all clear that Tiago Pinto was going to leave in February. Roma had talks with him. They had talks with Monza director François Modesto. Although the news about Modesto kept coming in, despite the fact that Modesto had made it clear that he still wants to work one more year at Monza. Roma, they couldn't wait for that long, so they decided to move on. And the next candidate was Ghisolfi. Now, Ghisolfi is 39 years old, and he's had two very interesting experiences. He's had an experience at Lens, and Lens have been a great surprise. In Liga, they qualified for the Champions League for the first time in over 20 years. And now, over the past year, he's been at Nice. He's helped Nice get back on their feet. Obviously, thanks also to the leadership of their coach Farioli, who seems to be on his way to Ajax. Farioli was doing wonders to start the season with, and now Nice we're closing in on a Champions League preliminaries. So that's also a historic milestone. Now, the profile, I think, seems to correspond with the kind of profile that you want alongside Daniele De Rossi, as in a young, up-and-coming executive who seems to have sort of the same values, the same eye for the same values that Daniele De Rossi would have. This is the big thing that Roma want with Ghisolfi, is to have someone who, unlike Tiago Pinto and Jose Mourinho, where I think there was and I mentioned this on the podcast, it always bothered me that there seemed to be such a big gap between Tiago Pinto, his vision, and the demands that Roma had to fulfill by financial fair play, and the demands of Jose Mourinho. It seemed like this gap got larger and larger and larger, and the two never really gelled. Now, I think the Friedkins know this, and wanted someone to come in and to really collaborate with De Rossi. You have to get someone on the same wavelength, and perhaps also, as dumb as it may sound, the fact that both of them are almost the same age could help, in the sense that you get two guys on the same wavelength. And Roma want to have Ghisolfi being very close to De Rossi. They also want Ghisolfi to bring some men with him. They want a person who will oversee strictly the Primavera transfers, and then someone who will be his assistant. They also want to promote the head scout Jose Fontes, who's been here at the club since 2021. That's the kind of close collaboration that Roma want to bring. What I think the feeling was, there was too much of a divergence between the two sides, between Pinto, who was off and doing something in his room, coming up with all these schemes, and also stressing out over what financial fair play was imposing on him. And then in the other room, you had Jose Mourinho, who was getting pissed off because Pinto wasn't getting him the guys he wanted. So, and that's documented. Both of them have addressed this issue, obviously in different tones. Mourinho has been much more critical of this. Even during his press conferences at Roma, he was always kind of like, "Well, I'm a guy who adapts very easily, but if you bring me, if I say bring me this player, and then you bring me five different ones, it's not the same." Now, I think Roma want to avoid that. Roma want to be smart this summer. We published this on the website today. De Rossi has already been in contact with Ghisolfi. Now, Ghisolfi obviously hasn't been working for Roma yet. He's under contract for Nice, although he will soon resign from Nice, so Roma will not have to pay for his exit. Now, that's huge for Roma, as always. But De Rossi has made it clear he wants more or less 5, 6 additional signings, and that will obviously also depend on, for example, Romelu Lukaku. Romelu Lukaku will leave the club, so that means Roma will want one striker. Then they want at least one box-to-box midfielder who can be of technical importance also to how the team plays, to how the team moves, and how aggressive it is. I think because there is, as we've seen in the last few games, there is sometimes a huge gap in the middle of the pitch. You want to contain that gap. Someone like Renato Sanchez was brought in to be that box-to-box midfielder. We saw how that went. Roma will send Renato Sanchez packing all the way back to Paris on his feet. They will not be sending him on a flight to Paris. He will have to get there on foot. Roma will also want at least two additional fullbacks, because, as we said, Leonardo Spinazzola will more than likely leave as a free agent. Rick Karsdorp will be definitely sold. Zeki Salik also could be moved. So you're already looking at 2, 3 fullbacks then you need to secure. And then an attacking winger. Now, that's where Federico Chiesa comes in. That's where also Lille's Edon Zhegovra comes in, a guy who has had quite a season for Paulo Fonseca's side, with 6 goals, 5 assists in Liga, and obviously Lille achieving once again Champions League qualification with Paulo Fonseca, who I'm rooting for. Great man. So there's a lot of stuff happening. We also have to see, for example, what happens to someone like Paulo Dybala. That's interesting. That's interesting because his entourage have been quite cryptic about what the future may hold for him. Jorge Antun, a guy who has been following Dybala and has been his agent for years and years. I mean, he's practically his uncle. I wouldn't even be surprised if he actually was his uncle. Has not given out much about what their plans are. It seems like everything is quiet. Everything is on a standstill. We know that there is this release clause, which will once again be activated, be valid. It will not be activated unless someone comes in, but it will be valid for teams outside of Italy. So Atletico Madrid are interested. Teams from Saudi are interested. Dybala will have to, I think, make a decision, and Roma will also have to make a decision, because as important as he is to Roma, as important as he is to De Rossi, and De Rossi numerous times has said, a guy like him, you don't even have to tell him where to play. He will figure it out because of how important he is, how good he is. So Roma obviously are aware of his quality, his importance to the team. The problem is the physical condition. Dybala has played 52% of all the minutes this season. That's a slight improvement over last season. He's been just as good, if not better, statistically. The problem is that in those crucial moments of Roma's campaign, Dybala very often has gone missing because of those injuries. And that's happened in Bayer Leverkusen. That's happened against Atalanta. And that happened last year as well, except for that Europa League final. Dybala's absence always weighs on Roma. Without him, Roma have an abysmal record of 1.27 points. So that's let that sink in. That's quite the MVP right there. That's Steph Curry levels of MVP. Um, I hope we invest in a lot of Italian players. I think that's what De Rossi wants to. I wouldn't know that because De Rossi is also a big fan of teams from other leagues. I mean, he's the first one who will give you a detailed breakdown of every single player that plays for Bayer Leverkusen. He will give you a breakdown of every single player that has done wonders with, say, Leicester City this season under the Maresca. Um, Getting back to the Premier League, he will give you a breakdown of all the players that Lille have had this season. So it's quite I think a weird assumption to have that De Rossi, being more in touch with the Italian landscape. I think this season it will be much more. This off season, rather, it will be much more about the functionality. If there is a lesson that the Friedkins have learned since that first major summer where they splashed a lot of money, that goes back to Mourinho's first season with the club. Mourinho arrives, Roma spend what 90 to 100 million in that first summer. People forget that. The problem is that people forget, but people remember that was spent on players such as Eldor Shomurodov, Matias Vigna, players who did not contribute much to the club. Matias Vigna is off to Brazil. Eldor Shomurodov right now is playing for Cagliari, but obviously could be moved elsewhere too if Cagliari failed to activate the buy option in his contract. The point is, Roma spent 100 million, but they spent it on Tammy Abraham, Matias Vigna, and Eldor Shomurodov. Tammy Abraham is a big question mark. What Roma want to avoid with the Friedkins this summer, having been given more of a leeway by UEFA, is to spend wisely. So that doesn't mean that you have to go out and get an Italian player to spend wisely. I would like to have Salvatore Esposito from Spezia, whom De Rossi coached at Spal. I think that could be a nice addition to the midfield, and he's a crafty player, and De Rossi likes him. But to say that De Rossi will focus on Italian players would be a misconception. Also with Ghisolfi, who has been a hell of a scout for talent, for talent in different settings, and someone like Fofana, who comes in and lands and basically changes the entire tempo and rhythm of the team. Fofana is one player who you can name on Ghisolfi's resume that immediately, just that name alone, really makes your eye go wow, because that's a player who pops in that environment for Lens. A guy like Fofana, just one player, one signing, made a huge difference. That's what Roma will want to do. So that's why I'm saying, is it a big summer signing? What is a big summer signing? I assume people will think that Federico Chiesa is a big summer signing. Now, Federico Chiesa is definitely a player that De Rossi likes. And De Rossi likes him because he's fast and he's technical. He's crafty. He's fast. He's got a lot of quality and great footwork. And we've all seen him both for Fiorentina and Juventus, and obviously for Italy during the Euros. He can be an amazing player. The problem is Federico Chiesa's priority right now is to stay at Juventus. You know why? Because Juventus just sacked Massimiliano Allegri. Welcome everybody to 2024. Allegri is no longer Juventus's coach. He's been fired a few hours ago. So that is great cause for celebration for Federico Chiesa, who did not get along well with Allegri and felt mismanaged by the Tuscan manager, who basically kept playing him as a fullback, and you just can't do that to a player as creative and as relentless in the way he attacks the penalty box. You can't do that. So Federico Chiesa's priority seems to be Juventus, especially if they get Thiago Motta as manager, a man who excels. It seems like, from revitalizing players in attacking positions. Look at Zirkzee, look at Orsolini, sales makers. So just imagine what Thiago Motta could do with Federico Chiesa. Now, I think that's the priority. And whether Federico Chiesa manages to renew his contract with Juventus, that's a whole other thing. Roma will definitely keep a keen eye on that situation. But so far, it seems like Chiesa wants Juve first, and then whatever comes later on comes later on. I know there has been interest in Calafiori return. Do you think he would continue his form under pressure of playing at Roma? First of all, Giovanni, I think it's a very interesting question of this about Calafiori, because Calafiori obviously left Roma as a fullback and has done wonders for Bologna as a center back. That was a major change for him under Thiago Motta. I think also physically, Calafiori embraced that change. He became much more. I mean, you look at him now. You look at how he's structured. He is structured like a real center back. That's his role now. He's grown into it. Wonderful player. I actually doubt any of the rumors about Calafiori. I don't think that's a player who right now is within Roma's range, because after the season he's had, after the talk he's caused among teams with Juventus, Milan being interested in him, even Bayern Munich, I just don't think you're looking at a player who could be within Roma's range. We're talking, I mean, again, consider where Bologna are right now. Consider where Roma are right now. Bologna will eventually sell Calafiori, but I do not think they will sell for anything less than 35 to 40 million. That I'm keeping it a low figure right there. It would be wonderful, and I don't think he would feel the pressure, because he's grown as a player. He's vastly improved. It has nothing to do with playing in a different position. It has to do all with the mental stuff. And Calafiori definitely this season has shown to be one of the best in Italy. What's the relationship with Hull City? Okay, well, yeah, for summer transfers, I think the relationship with Hull City is purely from a partnership perspective. So I'm not sure where that stands exactly, but that's one of also the major reasons why Roma are looking at a different summer right now, guys. Roma have, with the arrival of Linas Loku last year, a lot of articles have come out in recent weeks questioning Linas Loku's work at Roma. What these articles are omitting was everything that Roma have done commercially over the past year is thanks to Linas Loku. The sponsorship with Riyadh season is thanks to Linas Loku. All the partnership and additional sponsorships over the season are thanks to her work. And obviously, Vice President Ryan Friedkin, who's very operational for Roma. We may have a misconception of what the son of a club president does, but Ryan Friedkin has been very active. He's been the one. Ryan Friedkin is the one who attends basically every training session with De Rossi on the sidelines. So both of them, Ryan and Linas Loku, have been very close to the team, and they also have facilitated this growth, this commercial growth for Roma. Roma have earned a lot of money, not only from ticket sales this season, but also exactly from these partnerships and sponsorships, which they didn't have last season. So that also gives a big boost ahead of the summer. Is it possible to keep Indica, Boves, VR? I would say is VR definitely. Indica will see. Bove, I think it not only depends on Roma, it depends on the player. Bove is a guy who loves Roma, but at the end of the day, we're talking about a 21-year-old midfielder who wants playing time, which he's not getting at Roma. He's not going to climb the ranks at this moment in time. He's not going to fight his way into a regular spot in the starting 11. What benefited greatly for Bove in the first half of the season was that part of the team was disappointing, quite bad, and there were also lots of injuries, which then on, weren't there anymore, and Bove had to sit on the sidelines, watch others go to work. Somebody like Leandro Paredes, completely revitalized. That also definitely put a limit on Bove's minutes, and it's unfortunate. But I think with someone like Indica, I trust Roma to realize what the strength of having a player like him is right now. And I think even last year, Roma, when they've been over the last seasons, when they've been in a position forced to sell someone, they've always done their utmost to avoid selling the clearly important pieces. So obviously, Roger Ibanez was sacrificed last year, but it could have been a lot worse. Who else? Nemanja Matic walked away because he wanted to walk away. But this season, I doubt that Evan Dika would leave. I think the Roma realized that this is a player who is has still so much to give, so much to show. Miles Viar the same. Miles Viar, who goes from being a forgotten backup choice, a forgotten second option, to an aging Rui Patricio, and emerges as this incredible hero for Roma in their Europa League campaign, gets them through the penalty shootout against the Feyenoord, and right now is in talks to get a new contract. Sviar's contract right now, I think, expires in 2027, I believe. So he could be extending it one more year until 2028, and will be making more money because right now Sviar is the player with the smallest salary at Roma, barely making 1 million euros. So that's going to change soon. Roma realized that this is a guy who within a few months has gotten a lot of interest, and especially from the Premier League. Even Filippo Biafora, our good friend from Il Tempo, a great journalist, has said that VR's situation has been red hot in terms of how much other clubs in the world, especially the Premier League, have been dialing his number. But his entourage, the representatives are his family, his dad. They are very much engaged in discussions with Roma. So I think I do not see SVR walking away just because it just got started, And I think despite the fact that you may miss out on, once again, Champions League football, Roma are in a place right now where they can look ahead. They can look ahead because, first of all, I always thought that Baldanzi's signing in January for a fee of up to 15 million was odd. For a club like Roma, who don't invest that much in January, to have such a long-term option investment was bizarre. And then you have someone like Daniele De Rossi comes in, not his first experience, but his first major experience in Italy, top flight. A gamble, sure. PR move, sure. But I think De Rossi not only shows the right values for Roma, but he also shows the right ideas, sort of a direct opposite to what the kind of football that we were playing under Mourinho. I think now the Friedkins are like, well, let's go into this direction. With Thiago Pinto leaving, you have the opportunity to recreate something, to get a fresh start. And this is what the summer will be like. By all accounts, that's what the main positive is. Whether we qualify for Champions League football or not, and I've been here and John has been here, Champions League football is crucial because it gives you so much more. It gives you so much visibility. Even by just qualifying to the Champions League, you earn over 50 million euros. What Roma have earned from their Europa League campaign amounts to a little under 20 million, or 20 million euros. What they could earn from a Champions League qualification would amount to over 50 million. Now, that's for a club like Roma, it's huge. And if it doesn't happen, which it likely won't happen, it's a shame. And it's a shame also for the visibility for the players that you can attract. But that's where the main question also comes in. Are the days of signing the likes of Paulo Dybala and Romelu Lukaku over? As in, are the days of signing some aging stars, or rather players who are not in their prime anymore, or have been in questionable situations, right? So Paulo Dybala is in a situation where he gets injured a lot. He can't get a new contract with Juve. There is a back and forth, and he becomes available, and he becomes a free agent. Romelu Lukaku, a guy who is he had a terrific time at Inter, goes back to Chelsea, has a terrible time at Chelsea, doesn't want to play at Chelsea anymore. He's persona non grata at Stamford Bridge. He trains on his own in the summer, waits for a solution. Roma become that solution. Do you do that? Do you do those kind of signings? That's an interesting question. And I feel like the answer at this moment in time would be no. Would be no. Not because because perhaps that is unsustainable in the long run. That's the main point. Even with someone like Chris Smalling, we look at it in hindsight. Last year, the decision to extend his contract, despite the fact that he was last year, you can make the case Smalling was one of the top 3 players for Roma, and that would not be an overstatement. But the decision to extend him for 2 additional seasons puts Roma in a really difficult position, because this is a guy who earns 3 million euros, and he's giving you next to nothing. Okay, when he's healthy, he is awesome, but that's not been the case for the majority of this season. So we have Duncan. Man, I actually made the live stream for once. Forza Roma from Indiana. Here's to you, Duncan. Cheers. I passed through Indiana on a train, the Sunset Limited. Was it the Sunset Limited from New York to Chicago? The Amtrak, beautiful views of Indiana in the early morning. So anyway, we're talking about the Roma completely changing profiles, and I think it doesn't mean that Roma will not go for free agents. There are reports, for example, of Roma being interested in someone like Rafa Silva, who's having an amazing season for Benfica and who will become a free agent. He is also considered one of those crafty attacking players that De Rossi likes. But the whole idea behind the signing like Lukaku, it also becomes unsustainable when Roma and like many other Italian teams will not be able to make use of the growth decree. It will not be on the table. So Roma will have a tougher time getting someone like Lukaku, a player of that kind of magnitude, because Lukaku is a guy who earns around 10 million euros. With growth decree, that all becomes easier. Without Roma, and not even Roma, Inter as well, the Serie A Scudetto champions. It's everybody will be facing that same situation. Players from abroad with larger salaries will most likely be not within reach of most Serie A clubs, because again, reminder, even clubs like Inter and Juve and Milan are in a difficult financial situation. So there is a clear limit to what the clubs can do. And as always, the problem, or rather the solution, is to act smart. You have to be wise. That's what Roma, I think, are trying to do this summer. I mean, all the news, all the reports, all the rumors are setting us up for a summer that obviously will not be great. It will perhaps not be spectacular, but there's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be a lot of change. Sardar Azmoun will go back to Bayer Leverkusen. Nikola Zaleski could leave. Rasmus Christensen, Renato Sanchez back to their parents' club. Diego Llorente, even he is not assured of a place in the team. Leonardo Spinazzola, free agent. Romelu Lukaku, back to Chelsea. Tammy Abraham, what of him? What is the situation with Abraham? What can we do with Abraham? And then you have obviously all these other players such as Elor Shomurodov, Marash Kumbulla, Ola Solbakken, Andrea Velotti, who is having a terrible time at Fiorentina despite getting his hopes up for a permanent move there. So there's a lot of situations that Roma have to resolve, but there's also a lot of good things in store for us, especially with someone like De Rossi at the lead, with Ghisolfi coming in. I think that's a very needed breath of fresh air. Again, the Friedkins also ready to invest for the club. We also will have, obviously, players such as Leandro Paredes, I think, staying on and becoming leaders within the squad, especially with De Rossi at the helm. It will be exciting to see Roma keep Miles Viar. Viar becoming Roma's number one option in the long run could really be magnificent, because this is a kid who's, I mean, in a few months, he's given you so much. He's given you more than Rui Patricio has given you in the past year and a half. So Rui Patricio also leaving, obviously Rick Karsdorp leaving, and we have to believe. As always, we have to believe, because this is Roma. It's never easy, especially in the off season. Just as it's complicated during the season. Roma face Genoa on Sunday. Do I expect a result, guys? It's complicated. The answer doesn't change whether it's the summer transfer window or Roma's penultimate game of the season against Genoa in the packed Stadio Olimpico. The response doesn't change. The answer is always the same. It's complicated. Will Paulo Dybala will be able to play? Paulo Dybala has trained with the team, so supposedly he's in shape to play. Leandro Paredes, who had to come off against Atalanta, is back with the team, ready to play again. These could be Romelu Lukaku's last two games for Roma. Hopefully he gets a goal in. Roma have to get these last two games right, and then hope, and then pray. So basically, that's what we do on a weekly, or rather bi-weekly basis with Roma, and then that hope also stretches into the summer as we prepare for more rumors, more news. Obviously, guys, as always, you will find all the news on Roma Press, because that's where we get them. That's where you get them. And you can also listen to us here on the Roma Press podcast, on this channel, or on any streaming platform when there is something to talk about, something meaningful, something meaty. You will find me here on this live stream talking to you, getting your contribution. I wanted to thank each and everybody on this on this live stream who tuned in for this live stream, and to follow it along. Really, I appreciate all the support we can get. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. It really means a lot to have this community, this growing community. If you like what we do at Roma Press, for the social media, for the podcast, for the video podcast, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Roma Press. Even the smallest contribution means a lot to us. It really helps in the long run. And John and I, we prepare also to face a busy summer. It's going to be a busy summer at Roma Press. We want to try and modify certain things, bring a breath of fresh air also in what the website offers. So keep a lookout on that. I will be bringing you more updates as the weeks roll in. So once again, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead, and see you on Monday when the new episode following Roma's match against Genoa will be released. So until again, then, guys, Forza Roma as always. See you soon.